All right, welcome to Ivory GC. Today we're joined by Eric Fisher, General Counsel at Homeaglow, where he leads the legal function for a marketplace that powers home cleaning services across the country. Eric has guided companies through expansion, regulatory complexity, and operational growth with a thoughtful and business-focused legal mindset. We're excited to learn more about how he approaches legal strategy inside a fast-moving consumer platform. Eric, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
I'm glad you're able to join us. And can you start with just telling us a little bit about what you're doing with Homeaglow? Tell us a little bit about the company and the industry, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Homeaglow is approaching its 10th year since it was founded. It was founded by two former college roommates. You know, they were way smarter than me. MIT, computer science. They could write code, all the things that they never taught in law school. These guys could do. And what they did was they created essentially a marketplace like an Uber, but for house cleanings. And so Homeaglow is a place where customers can go and find a house cleaner who has been background checked and vetted. And they could schedule their cleanings. They could schedule recurring cleanings. The platform processes payments, so you don't need to use cash like so many people do when obtaining a house cleaning on the gray market or through Craigslist. And so they found a real niche that fills a need that people have. It's exciting. It's an exciting time for the company.
And how long have you been with Homeaglow?
It's been about 6 months. I started in November.
Okay. And you're the general counsel. Do you have a team with you, or are you solo? How does the legal function look like?
As far as lawyers go, you're looking at it, but I do have a trust and safety team that all report up to me, and they handle customer complaints that require trust and safety professionals' eyes. Got
it. So trust and safety. Tell us a little bit about that function. What kind of professionals are in those roles? What function they serve within the company?
So a lot of them are specialized customer service, but the person who runs the group has a law enforcement background.
Okay.
And it's, we are not of the scale of an Uber, but, there are similarities in terms of the issues that arise in this business when we're dealing with a nationwide network of house cleaners that we don't have an actual employment relationship with. It's the gig economy.
Yeah, understood. And so tell us about your background before getting to Homeaglow. Where have you spent much of your time, and what have you learned along the way?
So I started in law firms in New York City as an ERISA lawyer. Do not recommend. 1 star, do not recommend. And then spent the next decade or so laundering my resume to remove the stain of ERISA from it, right? So I started as an ERISA lawyer at firm 1, realized that I needed to change that and look to leave. And the only thing I was qualified to do as an in-house lawyer would be to work in an in-house benefits department, which, would have been compounding the already existing problem. So I went to a smaller firm that was looking for an executive compensation associate, which, wasn't exactly what I wanted, but I viewed it sort of as the first in multiple steps onto a different path.
Yeah.
And so then I was an executive compensation associate at a firm for a few years. And then 10 years out of law school, the year I was up for partner at this second firm, I get a call from a recruiter that found me by accident to tell me that Madison Square Garden was looking for a lawyer who knew benefits and executive compensation. And here I am, big live music guy, big sports guy. I grew up in the New York area. I've been a Knicks fan for 40 years, for better or worse. And at the moment, it's better, but
Yeah, it's
been. Like that call was like a gift from the gods, and
yeah.
I took the interview, got the job, and then spent 12 years there, sort of rising through the department, up the ranks. By the time I left, I was acting general counsel and sitting deputy general counsel. Went from there to run the commercial legal function at Gopuff, which at the time I joined was in the growth phase that the whole tech world was in, right? The whole tech world was buzzing, and Gopuff was on the verge of, they had announced already plans to IPO, and it was grow, grow, grow. And then, the record scratch happened. I don't know, the day I joined, the week before I joined, like right around the time I joined, after I had accepted the offer, interest rates went up, Russia invades Ukraine, the whole tech world pivots, and it becomes, how quickly can you become profitable? Not how fast can you grow? And I would say, to GoPuff's great credit, they were fast on that. They realized it. They stopped on a dime. They pivoted quickly. But even with that said, it's like, turning a yacht. You can't just do it.
Yeah.
It takes time. You entered into a million different contracts that, with an eye towards unfettered, interest-free funding and growth.
Yeah.
And now you're being told, no, we only should be doing deals that have short-term, near-term profit, and not sort of long-term prospects based on growth. And so I spent 2.5 years at GoPuff almost doing the opposite of what both sides thought we were getting into this relationship to do. It was all about, you're going to help us grow the department, you're going to help us expand into new markets, you're going to help us identify new areas of expertise that we need. And instead, it was 2.5 years of retrenching and getting out of deals and consolidating, which, if I was giving advice to young lawyers, these are tremendous experiences and skills to have. But I will say that buying things and building things and being involved on the team at Madison Square Garden that was helping to build the Sphere, that was a lot more fun than dismantling things and unwinding bad deals.
Yeah. And so how big was the legal department at GoPuff when you were there?
When I started, I had a team, I believe, of 18 or 19 under me. And by the time I left, it was me plus 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So
that's a big change.
Yeah, and frankly, that's not what they hired me for. And, it was like, we all agree that that wasn't the plan.
Yeah.
And, the world certainly did not care about GoPuff's plan for me and my plan for my career at GoPuff.
Sure.
It just did not, I say the tech market roller coaster hit that peak right as I was getting on the car. And then it was like, woo.
So what led to the opportunity at Homeaglow? How did you get connected with the company?
They reached out to me through LinkedIn. Obviously, my gig economy experience at GoPuff was, I think, what attracted me to them. I think that's what caused them to find me. And I just started talking to them and their team, and it's a really small team. I was talking to the CFO and the CEO and the president and the CEO being the 2 co-founders. And we just really hit it off. I think they're super smart. And they have a very math-brained way of assessing the world, assessing my world, the legal piece. So it's all about risk assessment, and percentages and justifications, and that's not my language, but at the, as long as it's, everything's very rational and very science based. And so,
Yeah.
we don't necessarily, those aren't our native tongues as lawyers, but
Yeah.
it's a language I can understand.
Interesting. Interesting. So what drew you to in-house legal work in the first place? And how has that perspective changed over the years, if at all?
I don't necessarily know what drew me. I never joined a firm wanting to be a partner in a law firm, at least not a big law firm.
Yeah.
When I was at my second law firm, which was mid-sized, I saw a path to me spending a career there, but I never really wanted to be a big firm partner. This might be my naive brain not necessarily understanding the life of a big firm partner when I was that age thinking about it, but in my head, it was always, hey, those in-house people are in a conference room, having a meeting, making decisions, and then they call us at the law firm and they have us execute on the decisions.
Mm.
And I want to be in the room where they're debating the actual decision making and not sitting at the desk waiting for the phone call on how to execute those decisions.
Yeah.
And I think since I've been, 20 something years out, I can now see that, there are plenty of partners at big law firms that are trusted to be involved in the decision making. But back when I was, 26 years old and I literally was the junior associate just sitting at my desk waiting for a phone call to be told what to do. Yeah. That in my mind, that's what everyone in the building did. We all just sat around our desks waiting to be told what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And has that changed over time? And if so, kind of how have you seen that interplay with your career?
No, I mean, I think I got that part right. I do like that aspect of it. The executive relationships are probably my favorite part of this job. It's if it was an easy question, easy problem, they would just be solving it without me. They're calling me because they have a question or an issue or a problem. And oftentimes it's specific to hey, can we do X, Y, or Z in California? Or, we got this letter from, this regulatory body. What do we do with it?
Mm-hmm.
In which case, obviously, they're going to call the lawyer. But sometimes it's just, hey, you're a smart guy and we have this problem with this business partner. What do you think we should do about it? Yeah. And that is, I don't want to say that's the dream, because if that's the dream, then let's be honest, we're not dreaming big enough as people. But that's the relationship that at least I want with my employer. It's that the heads of the company are coming to me because they value my opinion, not just my knowledge of the law. They value my judgment and my advice. And
yeah. So reflecting on your time at Gopuff and Madison Square Garden Entertainment, what were some defining moments that shaped your leadership style?
So I don't know if it shaped my leadership style, but I would say a defining moment is, and maybe, I don't know if this is the right point to talk about it. I know you said we'll do advice, and maybe this belongs in the advice section, but, just being smart and hardworking and, all the nice things you say about yourself, it's not enough, right? To excel, to succeed, to advance. Like, luck plays a part in all of this. And I got, there were a couple of points in my career getting to and while I was at Madison Square Garden that were just lucky, dumb luck. That right? Like, so the headhunter only found me for that role because they happened to be searching my firm's website for a completely different role. And they saw my bio and they're like, oh, wow, he would actually be good for the MSG job. Right? So that's luck. There's nothing I could have done to, set myself up for that. It's just dumb luck. And similarly, they hired me at MSG because they had just spun off from their public company parent, Cablevision, into their own public company. And so they needed some certain legal functions that they had previously relied on Cablevision for, including compensation and benefits. And so that's what they were hiring me for. But in my, first couple of years, you build plans, you build relationships with the vendors and with the internal stakeholders, you build a calendar, you build routines. A lot of it doesn't necessarily run on autopilot, but a lot of the work is done, and it freed up a lot of bandwidth. So after a couple of years, I'm raising my hand and I'm saying, hey, I could take on other stuff. And, part of that is playing defense and not wanting to be out of work because they don't need me anymore. But mostly it's playing offense, right? It's this, I never wanted to be an ERISA lawyer. This was a huge mistake. And I took the MSG job with my sole goal. I want to be able to leave this job and apply for any in-house corporate lawyer job. Like, I just want to be just a guy. I just want to be a corporate in-house lawyer. And so I'm raising my hand for that purpose. Give me something different. Give me something else.
Yeah.
But the luck part comes in that the very moment that that bandwidth is freeing up for me, the company finished renovating the arena. So Madison Square Garden Arena in New York City, they did a huge renovation of the building. It took 3 years, cost a lot of money. And because of that, during that time, they weren't investing in other things. That was the primary use of the company's cash. At the end of it, not only did they have their regular steady cash flow that they now needed to deploy elsewhere, but the renovation itself created all of these new revenue streams, new suites, new sponsorship sales opportunities that were bringing in just tremendous amounts of new cash that they had to deploy. And so the company just really leaned into growth.
Yeah.
And acquisitions. And our legal department was not staffed for that because they had never been doing acquisitions. And so that's happening at the same time as I'm like over, hey, look at me. Don't forget me. I'm over here. I want to do stuff. And so they started staffing me on these M&A deals. So the company bought a share of the Tribeca Film Festival. The company bought control of the Boston Calling Music Festival. The company bought majority control of the Tao Hospitality Group. And that just put my career in a whole different place. After a couple of years of that, I'm in charge of the M&A legal function. I have someone reporting to me that's an M&A lawyer. And then I get involved in other corporate functions. It really, frankly, it put my career on a rocket ship, a whole different trajectory. And it was a combination of me pushing and raising my hand, but the luck of them having this whole new opportunity come up just at the same time that I happened to be raising my hand.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense. And I go back to the story of when we first started Ivory. It was in the first month that we just landed a large client, and that relationship has grown, and it was really a time and circumstance situation that I can chalk up to thank you, whoever's looking out for everything up there. But yeah, no, it definitely is how things happen. So Homeaglow sits at the intersection of tech, labor, and consumer services. What are some of the most nuanced legal issues that come with that model?
So I would say that there are probably two areas of developing law that really hit at the core of what Homeaglow does. And the first is just the gig economy, let's call it. And that's really a lot of laws around worker classification and employee versus independent contractor, and how do you make sure that you're doing that correctly and you're correctly classifying the individuals. And that's something I definitely dealt with at Gopuff as well, and continue to deal with at Homeaglow. I think, there are a lot of companies that have sort of paved the road for companies like Homeaglow and right, like the Ubers and Lyfts and Instacarts of the world. It has gone. It feels like the world maybe 10 years ago was the law was more, hey, are we going to allow this? And now the law is more like, well, this is a thing. We have to acknowledge reality. And now let's sort of either regulate it or set sort of guideposts that as long as you stay within them, you're good.
Yeah.
And that's the good news. The bad news, that's not even bad news, but at Homeaglow doesn't necessarily get to take advantage of all of that trailblazing, because a lot of the laws that have popped out based on the work of Uber and Lyft and Gopuff, frankly, are specific to delivery and driving and transportation. And so there's a law in the books in California that sort of regulates, if you do X, Y, and Z, your Uber Eats driver is properly classified as an independent contractor. But the Homeaglow workers are house cleaners, they're not drivers. So we don't get to rely on those laws in the same way.
Yeah. And then go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just to say the other area of law that I think is critical and is ever changing is around marketing and subscription renewals and to a lesser extent privacy. That doesn't really hit us quite as hard, but that hits everyone. Any internet business has to deal with it. We're not a reseller of data. We don't really, so I'm not quite as focused on it. But those are things where, in a rational world, where if we had a rational Congress, there would probably already be just very clear federal laws on these issues. But there aren't, so we have to sort of deal with the 50-state mishmash of, oh, well, this is what you do to comply in California, but Illinois has this whole other thing, and you got to do it. So that's the sorts of monitoring.
So you're building a legal function at Homeaglow from the ground up. What are the first systems or workflows that you focus on?
So I think the first thing that I focus on when I'm joining a company, I mean, this is the first time I'm joining one where I actually have to build a legal function, so it's a little different. But the first thing is just relationship building. It's you get in there, you have to build relationships with your clients, with the business leaders, with the business owners, the people who you are going to need to come to you with questions. Because half of this job, the only way to really succeed as a general counsel I've found is when the client respects the role enough that they're going to come to you before doing something that may be stupid or wrong or illegal. Because it's hard to feel like a success when you're putting out fires that you wish you were able to prevent in the first place. Yeah. So I think building those relationships and building that trust so they understand that you share the same ultimate goal, that you're not just there to be a roadblock, to be, the department of no, that it's more, well, you can't do it this way, but let's just do a detour. I know you want to get here, and I'm telling you this road is closed, but let's get you here another way, and working through that with them so that they could trust that you have you have a shared interest, a shared goal. I think that's my first thing. And then the other piece of it is, I think you have to always be cognizant that if you're being hired as the first in-house lawyer somewhere, there's a reason. Like, whether it's because there's a litigation that's ongoing or an investigation by a regulator, or maybe they just settled the litigation and it went more painfully than they would have liked. And they said, all right, well, our learning from this is that we're going to hire an in-house counsel and, build the function and improve. Whatever that reason is, figure that reason out and make that your priority, because ultimately that's what you're going to need to deliver on in order for the powers that be to feel like they made the right decision.
Yeah, oftentimes I've seen smaller companies, growth stage startup companies struggle with due diligence and raising money, needing to know where are all of our contracts, where do we, I mean, and if they're planning for an exit or planning for an IPO, you've got to have your house in order, and so you bring in an in-house counsel. At least that was my experience, and you work on setting up a data room so it's ready when you need it. That's definitely.
I mean, look, right? None of these companies, none of these CEOs are without a legal function and sitting on cash and equity, and they're like, you know what? I'd like to give some of this away to a lawyer. Like, what would make these meetings more fun if a lawyer was on the Zooms with all of us? Like, none of them think like, right? So clearly there's a reason. And I think yours is a great one. Or there's they did the round of funding, and now the more mature investor is there and is saying, you guys need a general counsel.
Yeah, 100%. So what along the way, as you're building this legal function at Homeaglow, are there tools or technologies that have made a big difference in helping you manage risk without slowing things down?
So I haven't yet. We're not, knock on wood, or I don't even know if it's luck, but for better or worse, we're not very contract heavy. We have some vendors, but our systems are largely proprietary. The co-founders built them themselves, and so we don't have too much paper. We don't have too many contracts flying around. But I've been other places, and I've seen other general counsels and seen other lawyers and legal department where if you don't have, a CLM a system, you're screwed, right? Like there's different departments with different papers flying around everywhere, and and now especially with some of these companies are fully remote, so there's not even like I'm dating myself with this. There's not even a file cabinet where you could go to and pull contracts. You're just sort of you are hoping that the guy who lives in San Francisco or the guy who lives in Miami or the guy who lives in New York is saving it to the shared drive that you have access to. And so without, whether it's ironclad or, there's a million of them, like you're in some trouble.
Yeah. So you've worked across entertainment, logistics, and services. How do you stay agile as an attorney and effective across different industries?
I think that's a great question. I think a lot of it is staying curious. I think a lot of it is not specific to an industry. Like when you distill the role down to the core, it's we're assessing risks, we're solving hard problems, and that sort of applies across everything. I mean, I will say that at the end of it, if it ends in a rock concert or a basketball game, that there's a fun factor tied to that may not be tied to it in other industries, but the work is really all about being a thoughtful problem solver. Like it, and you have to be smart, but it's different than book smarts. It's about understanding your coworkers, understanding their problems, and trying to solve their problems.
Yeah. So what regulatory trends are you watching that could reshape how marketplace companies like Homeaglow operate?
I mean, still the gig economy.
Yeah.
I certainly think that's trending in a certain direction. I think the latest trends are around, I forget what they call them, but essentially they create the states are creating laws that allow for, it's almost like 401k plans for independent contractors. They're like little mini accounts, and most of the time it's permissive. I haven't come across any where it's mandatory, It's more like, hey, if you want to set aside up to 4% of comp for these independent contractors in an account that could be used to pay for retirement or pay for health care or, grow tax free, we won't hold that against you when determining whether they're employees or not.
Yeah. Interesting.
And that's sort of I sort of view that as step one down that road.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if some of these states made it mandatory, sort of like, if you want to be allowed to call them independent contractors, you have to make sure they have a path to retirement funds or healthcare funds. I could see that happening. I'm sure there's lobbying on all sides of that, right? Whether it's the Ubers of the world on one hand, or the Fidelities of the world that would love to get 4% of every Uber driver's earnings, right? So I could see that being a lobbying quagmire.
Interesting. So for a young attorney hoping to grow to an in-house legal leader, what advice would you offer them today?
I love that question because I would start at such a basic. So I'm not trying to give her a plug, but my wife has started a business. She's by training, she's a human resources executive, and she started a business of career counseling for young executives. It's almost like a career coach. It's executive coaching for younger workers that aren't executives yet.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like coming out of COVID. A lot of people are starting their first jobs coming out of college, and they're not necessarily being trained to be professionals the way that you or I might have been trained to be professionals when we were coming out of law school.
Sure.
And so the advice I would give a really young attorney is, I know that it's office optional or hybrid or whatever. Go to the office.
Yeah.
Be there. Be present. I'm not saying you have to go 5 days a week, but go and see partners, talk to them, answer the phone when they call. Don't let it go to voicemail. Make eye contact. Like some of the things. And I have 2 daughters, and my oldest is going to be a sophomore in college now. And so, I see kids that are, younger than first-year associates, but, on that path developmentally. And it's like there's a lot of advice on those lines that about how to just be professional, how dress for success, like all that stuff, right? But in terms of you're a professional, you're a lawyer, and you want to, I would say you got to be curious. You got to being smart, being hardworking. That's kind of table stakes. It's just sort of assumed. Whenever I interview anyone, I just kind of assume, coming from Simpson Thatcher or Wilkie, whatever firm they're coming from, like they're gonna meet whatever threshold of intelligence I'm gonna apply to. And I'm also going to assume that they've had to put in like 240-hour billable months. So I know that they have the work ethic to put the time in. But are they curious? Are they asking questions? Are they interested, like, in understanding? Well, almost like when my kids were toddlers. Well, why? And why? And then you explain it. But why that? And why that? Like, that's a good thing. Like, annoy me with questions. Like, show me that, because the curious person is going to be the one that wants to raise it, especially at a small legal department, right? Maybe if I was the general counsel of, General Motors, and we have 1,000 lawyers in the legal, we're essentially our own law firm. I don't need people that are that curious, because everyone has their own little niche and they just do their job and go home, and that's good enough. But in a small legal department, if I, knock on wood, get the opportunity to hire one lawyer, like that will double the size of the legal department. And I'm going to need that person to do contracts, but also to get involved in litigations. And also, hey, can you chase down this new privacy law that just got passed in whatever state? And so if I hire someone who isn't curious and doesn't have a desire to really branch out and learn different things, then I made a bad hire. And which isn't to say that, I guess, which isn't to say you have to be curious. Like, some people just aren't curious, and that's okay. But I don't think then that the right path for that type of person is to try to sort of rise up the in-house ranks.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Well, thank you for sharing that, for being here. I love what you've talked about around curiosity, problem solving, making sure that you got to have some grit and to go out and find the answers, and to go out and have the curiosity and the work ethic to go get into different areas of laws. As in-house counsel, you got to be somewhat of a generalist at a small firm or small department in particular. So thank you for coming on, sharing that, and wish you all the best as you build Homeaglow, and we'll be following you. And thanks for being here.
This is great. I appreciate the time. Thanks for having me.